You ever buy a shirt when you're out and you think, this is so awesome, I'm gonna love it, I'm gonna wear it all the time, it's so great. And then you get home and you try it on and you think, hey, what the f was I thinking? That's me right now with this shirt. It was $600. And I also bought it online. But that's not the point. This is why I buy camera equipment and not clothing. So anyways, I'm Renton Vlogs, aka the Super Mediocre, and let's talk about the Canon EOS 1.2 85mm USM MarkII lens. Now there's two versions of this lens, the version 1 and the version 2. They're practically identical. There's no reason to get the version 1 of the lens unless you want slightly softer images. It's more difficult to shoot with, it's not as fast as focusing, and you're gonna have more of a peace of mind shooting with the version 2. Is it more money? Slightly, but only incrementally. I always recommend buying the lens used and in excellent condition. If you buy this lens used, you're looking at about $800 for the version 2 and around $600 for the version 1. To me, save up a little more, get the $800 version. The motor in it's faster, build quality's the same, and you're gonna get a slightly sharper image, so you can always deduce down in post if you need to make it a little softer. That's not a selling point for the version 1. You know, it still exists. You can still buy it. You can save a little bit of money if that's what you want to do. It's your money. You can do what you want with it. Like I did when I bought this f***ing shirt. Coincidentally, this shirt, same price as the version 1 of the lens. All right, yeah. Should have got the version 1 lens too. Probably would have got more use out of it. So that's it for the price. They're basically the same lens. Build quality's phenomenal on both. It's a Canon L version lens, so it's, you know, the highest quality before the RFs, but the L line, I believe, became the RF. I don't know a ton about Canon stuff, but Canon does make select products here and there that I absolutely love. And the thing I like with Canon is the longevity and usage you can get out of the equipment. Now, I know you could technically do that with just about any piece of camera equipment, but for example, the Canon EOS 1DS Mark III, you've heard me say it before in a lot of videos, one of the best cameras made of all time. Is it the most user-friendly camera? Absolutely not. I just love the images that that camera is capable of producing when paired with just about any lens. In my case, the 85mm 1.2 USM Mark II lens. And while it is a portrait lens, I've not once used it for portrait photography technically. I do shoot a lot of concerts with it. I absolutely love it for concerts. It's a beast in low light, and if you want to take it into the street and shoot with it, you can. I don't necessarily recommend doing that just because it is a larger lens. For the sake of street, almost burped. I don't recommend doing that just because it is a larger lens for the sake of street photography, but it's not overly cumbersome or burdensome like a large zoom lens. Just when I think street photography, I do tend to go smaller form factor for the ergonomics of cameras and lenses. One of the things I really like doing at concerts or music festivals is you can stand back from your subject or wherever you're trying to shoot, and you can kind of look through the crowd and scope it out and then get your shot that way, so you don't have to be right up in a person's business getting their photograph. So you can shoot concerts and festivals more along the lines of the way you would typically shoot street photography. And everything I do typically stems back to the idea of street photography with how I go about shooting. I don't like when I'm noticed and taking a photograph. I like being subtle. I like capturing people in their natural element. And I don't like being a distraction, whether it's to a music artist on stage or to somebody in the crowd. I want them to just be as they are in the moment and capture that. So with the 85mm, you can kind of keep your distance a little bit without having to rely on a zoom lens. No, your shot's not going to be as wide like using a 24, 28, 35, 50, but that's not the point. Those types of lenses are great if you want super wide shots. I think there's something to be said about picking a narrower focal length, in this case 85mm, and really selecting the area and your frame of which you're choosing to shoot. And again, it's making you think about your photograph before you take it, where You're not necessarily running and gunning and, you know, the autofocus and the motor and the lens is good, but it's not necessarily the fastest lens to focus quickly at a 1.2, and that 1.2 is a very narrow, shallow depth of field. So to hit your focus point, you really gotta be there. But it looks absolutely outstanding when you do hit your photograph. Typically, I have something to say about it. I don't like this, I don't like that. I think if you buy it used, not new it's still like $1,500 to $2,000, and that's if you can find them new, and I think that is overpriced for what the lens is. But for approximately $800, you can get a phenomenal top-of-the-line piece of glass. And before you go about upgrading your camera, especially if you use some type of EF mount-based camera, think about upgrading the lens if you're using like an entry-level kit lens or a lens that's just not super well built. Before you go about upgrading your camera, always think, would it be better if I just upgrade my lens first? And I always think lens first, camera second. But also pick a camera that you like to use and that is ergonomically friendly to how you like to hold the camera, how you like to position yourself from the subject. There's a whole myriad of different things and thought processes that go into picking different types of equipment. My point here is, this is an older lens. If you're here on this video, you're probably at least somewhat familiar with it. Don't get confused between the 1.2 version 1 and the 1.2 version 2. The 1.2 version 2 is the better option between the two. Now, what's interesting is Canon did release a 1.4 85mm version of this lens. Is that the better option between the 1.2 or the 1.4? We already know the version 1.2. No bueno. The 1.4 85mm is a superb lens. Do you need that extra stop of light to really get that 1.2 or extra stop of light? All right, I already f***ed that up. That's gonna be up to you. I'm typically in low light situations, especially with events, especially with documenting comedians, especially with documenting music artists. So having that extra stop definitely helps me out for my personal situations. And I think when you're thinking about an 85mm focal length, think beyond just the typical places people use different focal lengths. If you're in a studio doing portrait photography, that's mostly where you're gonna see 85mm. You don't commonly see 85 on the street with people doing street photography. You don't commonly see people shooting 85 at concerts or shooting 85 doing documenting events at comedy clubs. But I always look at lenses and the types of images those lenses produce when paired with certain cameras. And to me, the way this broke down everything from the like shadows and contrast to undertones you get in crinkled clothing to accurately reflecting the skin tones on individuals for what I'm seeing in the moment, to not being limited in low light situations, with not being annoyed with how much the camera and lens weighs paired together, which is something to consider. I'm gonna go ahead and say it, and I know this is gonna be subjective, but for under $1,000, I do think this is Canon's best lens that you can get for the EF system. EF? Yes, Canon EOS, this is an EF mount. So I know it's not necessarily the most versatile focal length, but that doesn't really matter. It's one of those things, if you always shoot with 50s or you always shoot with 35s or you always shoot with 28s, 24s or wide angle based lenses, you're gonna get used to having a much wider shot where, you know, with certain things, we like to say aim small, miss small. Where the idea is you're focused in, and if you miss your target per se, you're still relatively close to what you ultimately wanted to get. If you get used to aiming small and just like really looking at where you're trying to hit, you're going to, over time, build up a skill set that helps you hit more shots in the long run. So for the sake of, if you just like shooting with an 85mm, if you want to challenge yourself in different ways, if you like positioning yourself to the subject, versus zooming in and zooming out and all that. Nobody likes that. Lots of people do. I just, not me. And you're not going to get your brain set on like, oh, I need a wide lens to be able to document this event or this scene or this subject well. You'll be able to really open up your horizon and broaden your perspective on shooting with a more narrow focus lens. Now you could keep upping it and say like, well, I'm gonna shoot 500 millimeters at this concert. It's like, that's probably not a good idea, and that lens is gonna be massive and you're not gonna be very comfortable. There's obviously the law of diminishing returns here. You're gonna hit a point where a lens might get too big given the focal length, where it's just not fun to shoot with given your situation. This does not qualify as that, but it does qualify as a really well-built piece of equipment that's ergonomically friendly. It's not gonna make the camera too top heavy, assuming you're shooting with a prosumer Canon camera that's maybe a little dated. Maybe it's from 2007, maybe it's from 2011, maybe it's one of the more recent cameras that Canon has released. Yeah, I think those are the things to think about when, one, shooting with an 85, two, shooting with this 85, and then three, is it going to allow you to produce the types of images you ultimately want to create? And if the answer is yes to most of those, if not all of them, it's definitely worth picking up. Not the cheapest lens on the market, not the most expensive, a little bit dated at this point. The motor on these over time, because it is a motor that is going to wear down, it is going to get slightly slower. It may not maintain its accuracy, which is why I always say, especially in a case like this, buy an excellent or as close to new condition as you can without buying new, to just save a substantial amount of money. You know, we operate on that 40 to 50% open box discount rate most of the time. But yeah, just think about that stuff. And if 85mm is something you're curious about shooting with, don't just think this has to be used for portrait photography or for studio shoots. You can use any lens however you want to. I don't really know what else. I'm too distracted right now by this shirt and why I bought it. I don't know why I thought this was a good idea. I bought the pants to match too. I was like, I'm gonna wear this to art shows and art galleries. You know how many I've been to since I moved to where I live now? 0. There's a link in the description down below that if you click it, you can request access to a Google Drive folder that contains photographs taken with this lens paired with the Canon EOS 1DS Mark III. Give me a day or two, I'll grant you access. You can then download those photos, play around with them in post, and really get a better idea on if this lens is or is not right for you. Signing off for today, I'm Renton Vlogs, aka the Super Mediocre. Give me a like for the shirt and letting me know I'm a for spending $600 on a patchwork shirt that looks like our
Check it out, check it out. Banger, it's the winner's turn. So my mode is all black, my nigga, my mode. Check my mode. It's the winner's turn.